have some questions.
My question is for the gentleman that spoke before Alex.
Richard.
Can you talk a little bit more in depth about the risks involved with the international transactions?
Risks of an international transaction. What risk? I'm telling you, this whole National Export Initiative, the government is literally, and good folks in the communities as well, we're taking people by the hand. That's not just a figure of speech. We're leading you to the education to become an exporter. There's so much online training available. Mentioned earlier the business planner tool that we just launched. There's so much information. That's all just to make you export ready, or at least acclimate you to the differences of doing intrastate commerce versus international commerce. Then the Commerce Department, through International Buyers Program, where they actually bring delegations of foreign buyers here. You don't even have to leave the soil. Then the financing part, which is the support mechanism after you've made a transaction. After you've negotiated, you're taught how to price your goods, because it's not going to be sold at the same price that you sell to somebody domestically, because you've got shipping costs and stuff like that. So after that's all figured in, and you make your sales contract, the method of payment, if you can get cash in advance, there's no risk. You've mitigated your own risk if you've got a buyer that's going to pay you in advance. Seldom is that going to happen. But if you've got international banking mechanisms that are secured by both the domestic and the international bank, that's 99%. But with the Ex-Im banks, insurance, if you still want to be insured, and typically you don't have to get insurance if you've got letters of credit. But if you want to be double sure, you still have this, or the bank says we still have this gray area. You take out export insurance, very cheap. The deal is done. You're going to get paid no less than 95% of your shipment, which includes getting paid for your cost of goods. So if you've got $1 million shipment and something happens and you never see a dime from the buyer, but you've got export insurance, you can get $950 grand.
You should also mention OPEC.
Well, it's OPIC. OPIC, the Overseas Private, there's 5 of us. There's Ex-Im, SBA, Trade and Development Agency, TDA, Foreign Agriculture, and OPIC. OPIC and TDA have large dollars for international project financing. They do have some trade financing, but they're known mostly for doing U.S. and foreign partner infrastructure projects, building highways, airports, and things like that, as well as some large capital equipment or engineering services even. But just the exports of goods or services, typically they're handled by Ex-Im Bank and SBA.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? And let's see, we haven't heard from the woman over here.
Hi, Fiona from Executive Editing. I have some questions for Dottie. Just cultural questions, and I'll ask all 3. What's the difference between haggling and arguing? Isn't arguing just haggling with words? How does innovation happen if there's no deviation? And who gets the promotion?
Esther, to answer your questions, I'm going from the bottom one and going upwards. Who gets a promotion? Well, you don't want to be the nail that sticks out. Then you get hammered down, of course. But you do show your initiatives, as in you do a good job. When the boss hands you a project, you do a knockout job. You knock the ball out of the ballpark, or you do whatever. You still have the same kind of human drive, human initiatives, except you sort of have to stay within a parameter. You don't want to go too far. So, those are the folks who, just like here, any society, that you have the drive, you have the ability, you have the smarts, not the degrees, not the PhDs and masters. I'm sure there are folks here who do have those. The degrees are good, but that doesn't always give you the chance to be promoted. So good question. Second question, I wasn't quite sure what that was.
A similar question. If you are supposed to stay inside the box and not go outside it and not question, then it seems to me like everything stays the same. And that was the thing that you said. It's like, it stays the same. You work within these parameters. So
Yes.
how does innovation happen if everybody has to stay the same?
Well, I think it's a very good question too. I think within the parameter, you have room to maneuver. Does that make sense? Say if within the company culture, people expect you to do X, Y, and Z, but doesn't mean you can't do a K, because K is still being accepted. Still, K is still okay. It's not like you're doing something really outrageous and really crazy. So that's when the innovation comes from. And these days, people have a little more freedom, if you will, just because China has been open for the past 20 years. And for all intents and purposes, the internet is everywhere, except I guess Facebook is not really working in China yet. But everything else people could have access to. So you have a little bit of freedom. No Facebook there, and certain sites are still being blocked, like New York Times, Washington Post, to name a few. And you have that freedom to move around and be noticed. Again, get a mentor within the system. You've got your top leader and deputy leader, assistant leader, whatever the ladder is. You find a mentor. You find the ally. Someone who could groom you. Somebody who could say something on your behalf. I have a perfect example. This one guy, he was a lower level person within the Foreign Affairs Department within my home province. Back in 1998, the province sent a group of people like him, mid-level managers, government officials, to come to University of Maryland, a College Park, not too far from here, to get a 6-month training. I taught them. I taught them about public relations, government relations, that sort of thing within American society. So now it's 13 years later. Can I do math? Okay, 13 years later. Actually, before that, about 7 years ago, he got promoted to be the #1 public affairs director within my home province, which means he's the guy who tells the governor what to do when it comes to foreign affairs, whoever visits my home province. And now 2 years ago, he got promoted to be a very important diplomat of the Chinese embassy within European Union. So now he's stationed in Brussels for the past 2 years. So this is a guy who is very smart, intelligent, but he knows how to play the game. He knows how to find the mentors that will groom him, will be saying nice things on his behalf. So he does everything that's right within the system, but he does it much better than the others. That's why he gets this career projector that he's gotten. The first question was, sorry.
What's the difference between
haggling and arguing? Haggling is about a ritual. It's an art almost. You go to a market. This purse costs you $10. I know it doesn't. Costs you $10, and that's the price from the vendor.
So much more.
Yes, ma'am, I agree. The vendor gives you the price tag of $10, $100 just to make her happy. Then you say, no way, I'm not going to pay $100. It's not the price. You said, I want $50. So you go back and forth until you settle at a price between $50 and $100. It's haggling. So in a sense, you are arguing, but for the sake of getting to a point. Arguing, I don't know if you finally can get to a point. You know what I mean? Sometimes you argue, you get to a point. Sometimes you just have to agree to disagree. All right, so thank you. Good questions. Okay.
Sorry.
Right here.
Is that for me?
Everyone, I guess. I have 2 questions. What is the, maybe Yvonne might know or others might just be, the failure rate of, we've seen the increase, fastest growing population being us in small business. What is our failure rate for businesses versus the majority is one. And then on the banking side, Is there such a thing as forgiveness for when someone does fail, goes back to the drawing board, puts it all together, and then presents himself again, maybe a little wiser? So, yeah. So I guess I'm
SBA's advocacy office has a report on
I think it's called Minority Business Dynamics, and they have the failure rates. Minority-owned businesses do have a slightly higher failure rate, but actually Asian-owned businesses have a higher success rate. And all of that is tied to a lot of factors: educational background, having a college degree is favorable in terms of the success rate of businesses. Also, having capital to start your business. The industry is also a factor, and what we talked before in terms of the experience and of running a business before, and all of those, a lot of minorities do not have that family background. Therefore, they open themselves to more risk in terms of the business not operating after 4 years. So.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
With regards to with regards to forgiveness, understand that even though we talk about having budgets and performance and projections, how we like that, see that information, bankers only really look backward. Okay, we want to know what you've done and how you've done it. Okay, projections are nice, but that's what they're just simply projections. We look at trends. So if there's been an issue that's had an adverse effect on your business, whatever that may be, and then you pick yourself up, you get it going again, we're looking for a trend. I mean, if you had a failure and then you pick yourself up and then you pick it up year one, and then all of a sudden year two, the trend is going in the right direction, that's what we look at. So yes, there is forgiveness. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time, to get back to what I refer to as a bankable position again. But again, there's so many, and we've heard about so many different alternative ways to access capital. I emphasize in knowing, what those alternatives are and having a contingency plan. And if you did have a situation that caused, an adverse effect to your business and you're now in the process of rebuilding that, stay with it and address your needs to the appropriate source. If that's been 2 years, 3 years, and you've been showing some growth and things are going in the right direction, the bank certainly would be the right place to be. Don't ever be discouraged in talking to a banker, regardless where you are in that process. I consider myself a helper. I represent my clients, my customers in the best way I can within the bank.
You don't want people to fail.
I don't want people to fail. Absolutely not. I mean, my objective is to help people grow and be successful. Okay, and that's in the bank's best interest. It's my best interest. It's everybody's best interest. So that's the answer.
Actually, if I could also answer that for the women really quickly. Women actually have a higher failure rate than male-owned businesses as well. And also something that we might not want to consider a failure, i.e. closing the business, but just not growing. All right, so women are opening businesses twice the rate of men, but at the same time they are growing very slowly. So they stay small, something that we call lifestyle business. And that is really important to remember as well, because it keeps them from ever getting to the point where they access one of those loans, all right, one of those bigger loans.
And it is important that we show this demonstrated because in women business owners circle, they've been touting, bragging about how women business owners are increasing from farming. But there's another side of the story. There's another side of the story, that is, you may have the numbers, but if you're failing at a faster rate than men, you're not a success. And you keep being small because it's just lifestyle. I will stay home and not go to an office where I can be exposed to other circumstances and challenges. Then you can actually grow yourself, be challenged, and therefore be bolder, and learn more, open your mind, your eyes, and your ears. You're not going to succeed. So I think it is good for women's business centers like yours to show the dichotomy. On the one hand, we say we're so wonderful. Everybody says, "Whoa, you're wonderful." And you don't need any import help. On the other hand, there are those who really are touched by you who say, but I am not. So there's this lie that's being told out there.
Absolutely. You just don't want to open the door. You got to just unlock it.
Huh?
Just unlock it. We'll walk through ourselves.
Hi there. Hi there. My name is Walter from Minority Business Roundtable. This is a question about capital and one of the 3 C's, collateral. You said because of real estate values have dropped down. Several years ago, when my partners and I were looking to buy a business or a restaurant, we had the cash flow because the business had cash flow. Plus, we had cash from our previous businesses. We had the credit, but we didn't have the 3rd C, which is enough collateral for, I think, the loan we were looking for, like a $300,000 loan to buy a restaurant. So how would you go about getting through that 3rd C when if your collateral, if you're a service-related business or professional service-related business or something like in a restaurant business where you don't own the property and your property value has been hit, how do you go about, especially in the $300, $400 million loan where you don't have the collateral, how do you go about it?
Who wants to answer that?
Insufficient collateral certainly a reason why a bank, would not take a loan. In your situation, and we've seen that a lot, and it's one of the reasons why lending has been challenging, because many small businesses depend on that type of collateral to secure their loans. In the event that the value just isn't there to support the loan, we will then look to mitigate that risk by utilizing other types of assets that the borrower may have. I mean, up to including any kind of negotiable instrument or anything that's liquid. Certainly be good collateral. Equity in a home. I mean, PNC has a program where we will secure a business loan, whether with a commercial loan or with a commercial piece of real estate as well as a residential piece of real estate. So we look to the whole global picture to try to meet the right requirement for that collateral. It's a challenge. Sometimes people don't have the marketable securities, don't have the equity in their home. I mean, but sometimes a combination thereof. And then sometimes maybe just, accepting less is something that you need to consider as well.
Yeah, and in our case, we had collateral about $100,000. We had cash, but then the remaining balance was where there was a gap.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it was either $250,000 or $300,000 was a whole loan, and we were short about $100,000. And that's why the deal didn't go through because we didn't buy the
restaurants and any type of cash business typically is difficult for commercial banks to work with because it's you don't really have a receivable.
Yeah,
it's cash
business.
And it makes it more challenging. Not to say impossible, because
but it was an existing business that had a cash flow, and the person was retiring and didn't want to deal with the business no more, and was willing to sell it.
A bank will look. You can purchase a business that's been in operation for 20 years. The moment you go ahead and buy that business, that's a startup.
Yeah. And that was basically what we were at the end.
If I can just add one thing, is that to my knowledge, and I've been saying this for 21 years, that the SBA, and I know you're using SBA, has never declined a loan if the only criteria that was gray was collateral. Have never denied a loan guarantee to a lender if collateral was the only issue, which means all the other C's, all the other credit, all the other everything has to be near perfect. If you've got lesser than what a bank requires or would be considered industry standard, and it's insufficient. But just remember, the bank makes the decision if they're going to make the loan with or without a guarantee. In other words, they have to stipulate where it comes to SBA and the domestic loan guarantee is that that's the only way they will make the loan.
Right.
If their risk is mitigated through the guarantee. But if it's a bad loan, we smack them around if they bring something to SBA and says, why are you even considering this credit? Because there isn't anything right about it.
Yeah.
So that's what the lenders have to do. They've got a responsibility.
Yeah, as a
Going back
preferred
and
lender,
forth.
we're a preferred lender, which means that we can make the loans without really having their underwriters look at the deal. But if that loan goes bad, that guarantee is only good if we crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's and we did everything perfect. So I mean, yeah, there's still that level of risk. So we have to make sure that it's done right. Now, to Rich's point, SBA should always be your first consideration of a commercial loan. This a conventional type loan doesn't really figure what your need is. I mean,
Well,
SBA
now that I work for Minority Business Roundtable and stuff like that, I've gotten. But when that's a question, it's always repeated by our members also. Loans, especially those members who are service related, such as IT, where they don't actually have assets. You know, basically they go to a government contractor, they get a contract, and they don't actually have anything to collateralize while they grow.
The final question goes to the young woman in back who's been waiting longer than anyone. Final question.
Hi, I'll make this really quick. My name is Sofia Campos. I'm with AFT. So there were a few underlying themes in all of your speeches, and thank you so much for being on the panel, first of all. But one of them was the necessity to enter the international market due to the rapid globalization that our whole world has entered. And we have, I don't know if all of you are aware of, a rising immigrant youth movement surrounding the DREAM Act. So we have a lot of undocumented youth who graduate from U.S. high schools, graduate from U.S. colleges, have international connections, albeit local connections in other countries, but very significant connections, are multilingual, and have an education, and would be very prominent and significant business partners, consultants, etc. And I was just wondering what your businesses, if they have any stance on the DREAM Act, if they have any thoughts on the DREAM Act. And if you need me to explain the DREAM Act, let me know, because I can do that as well. We could go down the line. I would really be interested.
I cannot take a position, an official position on behalf of the agency, but I can tell you that in terms of businesses that are exporting and the data that comes out of the census, I can tell you personally I support it, but I don't know what's the official line. But when we look at data from the census, we find that a lot of the, first of all, minority businesses are more likely to export than non-minority firms. That's the first data point I want you all to know. Among firms that export, 100% of their sales are exports. Minority businesses happen to be 3 times as likely to be doing the exports. Now, the most important, interesting fact that I think you'll find useful for in support of the DREAM Act is that a large majority of these business owners that are exporting are actually immigrant-born. And among Hispanics, this is like 50% were immigrant-born, and among Asians, it's like 80 or 90%. So absolutely, that's why minorities also have this competitive advantage to go global. And that's one of our focuses, to really support the National Export Initiative, when the minorities are there already, and if they are able to double in their exports, we will be much closer to our goals. So I just wanted to give you that data for your efforts.
Our assistant over here wanted to answer that question as well.
So the lady over there, you were asking about the risk in international trade, and I just asked something about the currency exchange rate. And you know, because when you buy or sell goods to a foreign country, and it's likely if they don't use the dollars, and you have to consider, you know, buying them in euro or yen or yuan, and you know, like after the 2008 financial crisis, and the exchange rate has become much more volatile. And the secret of those huge, you know, conglomerates like Apple and General Motors, and what they do is they have these specialists that they trade in those currency markets to make sure that they won't lose money because of the change of the exchange rate. But for, you know, smaller business, you know, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and you know, obviously you can't afford, you know, paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars to hire such a financial analyst. And I know, like, we're all getting out of time, but if you want to know more about this currency exchange thing, and I will be at the reception, and I'll be happy to talk to all of you.
Okay, thank you all so very much. I'm turning the